Let's talk to someone who certainly knows a thing or two about intelligence. Congressman Mike Rogers from Michigan. He is the chair of the Intelligence Committee. He has been thoroughly briefed about the situation that's been percolating over the last couple of days in the Middle East. Mr. Chairman, good morning to you.
Good morning.
First, let's just begin with these pictures that we've been showing, live pictures out of the capital of Yemen. First we had Cairo, then we had Benghazi, now Yemen. How do you interpret this?
Well, we've had some problems across the Middle East, and I think the policy there we need more clarification on what U.S. policy is in the Middle East. And a little bit of strength now is going to be incredibly important. So the fact that we are going to pursue with all vigor the folks who perpetrated the crime against our U.S. diplomat station in Benghazi, the fact that there may be more to this story in Egypt about how it was coordinated, was there an information operation with some extremist groups who used the protesters to try to penetrate the embassy, and now, of course, what you see in Yemen, these are all opportunities that are stacking up for individuals who want to go after American stations abroad. So this is a very important time for us to have a very clear sense and communicate that to across the Middle East, what U.S. policy is, how we're going to handle people who cross the wall. This is a pretty serious matter, and we've got to stop it now. If we're still talking about other embassies in several weeks, we've got real trouble.
Chairman Rogers, you are the chairman of the Intelligence Committee, privy to some of the information that has been coming out overnight. You have been saying that we may be getting close to figuring out who exactly these groups were that did perpetrate this. What can you tell us? Is it one group in Libya, a separate group in Egypt? What do you think right now?
Well, I don't think, at least today, I don't have anything that would say that they were working together. The effort on the compound in Benghazi clearly was a coordinated type effort. This wasn't just a bunch of folks who grabbed some rifles and said, hey, this is a great opportunity, let's go down and shoot up the embassy.
Al-Qaeda, do you think?
Al-Qaeda, it certainly has all the hallmarks of an Al-Qaeda operation or an Al-Qaeda affiliate. And one of the things that we've noticed over the last 6 or 7 months is that Al-Qaeda in the Maghreb, northern Africa, has said that they're really eager to try to strike Western targets. We've seen cells in Tunisia, cells in Libya starting to develop. Of course, we knew cells in Yemen. And so we knew that there were activities, and I think this was at least a high-profile example. And remember, the site in Benghazi was the target several months ago of an IED attack. So this is not the first time that they've tried to cause some casualties and kill some Americans at this particular site. So we knew all this was kind of putting together, and it's likely, given the signature, that it was at least an Al-Qaeda affiliate organization.
Not the first time. Certainly been on the radar. That's an understatement. And I know, intelligence folks are going to be what they call re-scrubbing, looking at, old chatter to see if there were any warning signs. Were there no warning signs that you knew of that this would have been potentially so carefully planned?
Well, nothing that at least we have seen up to this date. And then you're right, we'll all go back, and we'll, as our job as the Oversight Committee, will be to go back and take a look at all that information, see what we may have missed, and if so, why did we miss it? But the interesting thing, I mean, obviously we knew 9/11 is an important date for Al-Qaeda and others who want to cause some harm to the United States. So security was, at least, they did a scrub around the date just to see if there was anything out there. Didn't seem like there was. But we're going to have to go back. A lot of questions to ask in this. Same with Egypt. Even though it was different, it wasn't a coordinated military-style attack. We know that for months they have been infiltrating protesters and generating protesters, and these are extremist groups who have very anti-American views. You need to understand if they were trying to do more than just protest, and if 9/11 was the day that they triggered this event to go over the wall into the embassy.
Mr. Chairman, I want to talk about Egypt right now because the response from the new Egyptian leader, Mohamed Morsi, has been tepid, to say the least. I think that would be a gross overstatement right now. He put a statement out on Facebook, kind of condemning the violence out there. And then President Obama last night gave an interview where he talked about our relationship with Egypt using very, very interesting language that I have to say I have never heard before. Let's take a listen.
I don't think that we would consider them an ally, but we don't consider them an enemy. They are a new government that is trying to find its way. They were democratically elected. I think that we are going to have to see how they respond to this incident. I think it's still a work in progress, but certainly in this situation, what we're going to expect is that they are responsive to our insistence that our embassy is protected, our personnel is protected.
Not an ally, not an enemy, Mr. Chairman. Do you agree with that statement, especially in the light of the fact that they're the second largest recipient of foreign aid to us, from us?
Well, you remember, since 1979, since the Accords, the Peace Accord, they have been an ally, been a very strong ally in the region for peace, which is important. And what happened with this new election is you have a government who is prominently, the majority of which is Muslim Brotherhood, who has made some very interesting and I argue counterproductive choices. They moved tanks into the Sinai, that area between Israel and Egypt that has now become inflamed with violence and weapons and all of those things. That caused a whole bunch of problems. There was some discussion of how do we negotiate bringing the tanks back out of the Sinai. Very provocative. And they've done had other decisions in Egypt, including the fact that they were not very responsive on protecting our embassy in Egypt. And so they have some little bit of anti-Israeli rhetoric, a little bit of anti-American rhetoric weaved through some of their speeches and some of their policies in Egypt. So that's why right now there is a question mark. Which direction is Egypt going to go? Are they going to be a friend and ally of the United States, or are they going to go off on their own path, which is going to set up a whole new set of problems for Egypt? And remember, some of this is for domestic politics. They have a horrible economy, and it's going to get worse. And sometimes in cases like that, we've noticed that the easy default is, well, hey, you might not have a job, you may have no hope, but let's hate the Americans or the Israelis across the border. And I think there's some of that going on in Egypt right now that's very disturbing and will lead to some serious trouble if we don't get this turned around.
Chairman Rogers, just one final question. And I know as Americans are waking up this morning and they're seeing these pictures playing out in Yemen and other countries, and they're thinking back to the last time we saw this, a celebratory revolution, and they're wondering, is the Arab Spring coming back to haunt us? What's your answer?
Well, I think it's too early to tell. I think there are certainly huge challenges. The problem is, Egypt is a great example of the Arab Spring. The people who caused the uprising, caused the change in government, caused the revolution in Egypt aren't really part of the government now. So it was the youth, it was the folks who were disenfranchised, highly educated, very high unemployment, and very well connected with social media, which is the thing that tipped this thing over. But those people weren't very organized. The Muslim Brotherhood had been there for a long time. They had a political organization. I think if you sampled the people who helped turn Egypt over, they're feeling a little disenfranchised the day that Morsi was sworn in. That's the problem you have in the Arab Spring, and we see it kind of filtering around all over. A little bit in Libya, smaller amount in Tunisia, but certainly in Egypt, the same in Yemen. So you see these changes where people still, on the day of the free election, still feel disenfranchised, and that's something we haven't quite gotten our arms around yet.
Mike Rogers, Chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. We will continue this conversation, I'm sure, at some point. We appreciate you being up with us this morning. And again, breaking news coverage continuing right here all morning long. Turmoil spreading across the Middle East. Protesters furious over this controversial film about Muslims made here in the U.S. They have now stormed the grounds of the American Embassy in Yemen. We're watching all the latest for you.
Also ahead, remembering Chris Stevens. We've hardly talked about him this morning, the ambassador who died yesterday in Libya, in Benghazi, the city he helped to save. We'll speak to Libya's ambassador to the United States next. Starting Point is back in a moment.